Knicks family, what's poppin'? Is your boy. Well, Steve Mills, ladies and gentlemen, he's gone. Hopefully, you guys can hear me, but he's been fired by the New York Knicks. It's been reported by Shams. I can tell you this: just before it was reported, I got a text from someone to say Steve Mills was fired, but let me confirm it. So I couldn't put it out there just yet because it wasn't confirmed. But anyway, he's been fired, and apparently he was fired on Sunday. He was fired on Sunday, so they had to wait for all of the Super Bowl activities and all of that kind of stuff to put it out there. But Steve Mills is no longer part of the New York Knicks. Now, the question remains, what happens to Scott Perry? Right? Is Scott Perry going to take over as the president? Is there going to be is there going to be another president that comes in? Who knows? Who knows what James Dolan's plan is? But we know that Steve Mills is no longer part of that plan. Now, there was always speculation that maybe Steve Mills would be moved to another part of the organization. We don't know that either. The only thing we know right now is that Steve Mills is no longer part of the executive office of the New York Knicks. How does this impact the trade deadline? We will see how this will impact the trade deadline. The trade deadline is 2 days away, right? 2 days away to the trade deadline. Today's the 4th. We got tomorrow's the 5th, and then 3 o'clock Thursday is the 6th. So we'll see how this impacts everything. Right? Big Brother, thank you for the super chat. You said, hopefully this means good decision making at the trade deadline. Hopefully, we'll see, because here's what we can say about Scott Perry. And as we start talking about the trade deadline, Mark actually brings this up all the time. Frank Ntilikina is not a Scott Perry guy, right? So will Scott Perry look at trading Frank Ntilikina? That's a question that you got to look at. Damian Dotson, he was not a Scott Perry guy, right? Damian Dotson, he was drafted or brought in under the Phil Jackson regime, which included Steve Mills, right? So, those are some questions that are left to be asked, or some questions that are going to be asked, and that I'm asking right now. What happens from here? But that remains to be seen how it's going to impact the trade deadline. Again, for anyone that's just joining, you probably already seen it. Steve Mills is out as the president of the New York Knicks. He was apparently fired on Sunday. And, that information could not get out because of the Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff. The only thing, all I can say is that it came, I got a text earlier today, about 30 minutes ago, to say, hey, Steve Mills is fired. They said, but let me confirm it. And then just as they sent me the text to say it was confirmed, it got out to everyone else as well. So, but it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? He was fired on Sunday. They're going through the process right now. I guess maybe clearing him out the building and all those type of things. But Steve Mills is out, and we'll see what's going to happen next. Always some news with the New York Knicks, right? Always some news. We'll see what's going to happen next. Obviously, Sam Presti is somebody that James Dolan is interested in. We all know about Masai Ujiri, that James Dolan is interested in Masai Ujiri as well. So we'll see if, he approaches those guys. And then what happens with Scott Perry. I'm pretty sure, I would think that if James Dolan has an idea of one of these guys, that he would want to approach, he's going to ask them about Scott Perry. Now, I don't want Scott Perry to become the new Steve Mills. Right? If James Dolan trusts Scott Perry, obviously he no longer trusts Steve Mills since he's out of here. If he trusts Scott Perry, I don't want Scott Perry to become the new Steve Mills. And now Scott Perry becomes the eyes and the ears of James Dolan. Right? So you need someone to run the show from now to the end of the season through the trade deadline. We'll see what happens after the trade deadline if there's a new guy brought in, and then maybe Perry will run the draft as well. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, and if he runs the draft as well, then Sam Presti, Masai Ujiri, whoever James Dolan plans on talking to or trying to bring in, does that mean that they trust Scott Perry and that they know that Scott Perry is the, will stay on board? Or does it mean that James Dolan says, I need Scott Perry to stay on board no matter who I bring in? You know, so we'll see. There's a lot of questions to be asked, ladies and gentlemen, about, what the future holds for the New York Knicks. Scott Perry, I'll say this. From what I understand, from what we all understand, Scott Perry's he's never had the keys to an organization on his own. Scott Perry has never been the person making all of the decisions, right? He's never been that guy. So even if he's in the interim, if he is the president during the interim or just the sole GM during the interim, this will be his first time having that type of position. He's always been the assistant or the guy next to the guy. This would be Scott Perry's first time being, and I'm sorry if I don't have this thing right. There you go. Now I got it right. This would be Scott Perry's first time being the guy that has the final say on decisions. So we'll see how that works out. Thank you, TJ, for the super chat. You said Dolan is going to pull up the Brink truck for Masai Ujiri. I would not doubt it. Listen, if I'm James Dolan, I'm going after nothing but the best. Nobody but the best at this point. And I'm not just talking about names. I'm talking about people who have a proven track record, right? Masai Ujiri, he has a proven track record. Sam Presti has a proven track record. And I know this is very, very far-fetched, but people like Jerry West has a proven track record, right? If you're going to entrust the organization with somebody and not put yourself into the mix, not have, if you're going to give autonomy to somebody, you got to give it to someone who has a proven track record and has guided teams to championships. That's why the names like Masai Ujiri come up, Sam Presti. I'm the one who's throwing Jerry West's name out there. I'm just saying Jerry West because I respect Jerry West a hell of a lot and his ability to evaluate talent, put together teams, and those type of things. Would he ever come to New York? I don't know. He knows, listen, Jerry West has connections all over the league, and I'm sure he knows all the ins and outs of everything that's happening with every team in the league. So would he even consider coming to the Knicks? Probably not. But hey, if I'm Phil Jackson, I'm putting it out there. Because if I'm going to give autonomy to someone, it's going to be somebody with a track record. And as much as I like Scott Perry, he doesn't have the track record. Let's be honest. He doesn't have a track record. Right? He was with the Pistons when they won a championship, but he wasn't the decision maker. He wasn't that high ranking. He didn't do that well in Orlando. He went to Sacramento and then, jumped out of there and came to the Knicks. So we'll see what happens from here. Right? We'll see what happens from here. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Steve Mills fired as the president of the New York Knicks, and it leaves some questions. The questions it leaves: what happens with Scott Perry? That's one. What happens at the trade deadline? That's two. Actually, what happens at the trade deadline is probably number one. right? Because that's what's coming up. That's a more immediate need, the trade deadline. Then what happens with Scott Perry? And then who comes in? Who comes in? Who's going to be the next? Who's going to be the next guy? So, ladies and gentlemen, listen, I got to get out of here. I got a meeting in here. I got, 50, 60 people in here waiting on me. So I had to jump out here and get this thing done. All right. I appreciate you guys. And I'm glad that I could bring some news to you, some good news to you today. All right. And listen, I'll talk to you guys a little bit later. When I leave here, I'm going to a basketball game because I got to coach a basketball game. And, but it's a good day for the Knicks organization. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm out of here. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace.